guys. Today I'm going to talk a bit about the early days. I was telling some of our staff yesterday how we had a call earlier this week about branding, and earlier just about not just the Clear Channel branding, but our company branding and our organization. And the feedback and the group that talked to us and kind of evaluated our content said, "Hey, Ken, you don't talk about the early days very much." And a lot of people should share the early days in the beginning and how things got started. So I put together three stories. I sat in my little rocking chair. Yeah, I do. I have a rocking chair. It's because I have kids, for the record, not because I'm old. But I sat in my room last night on my laptop and was thinking through the early days. So I'm going to tell you guys a story of my early days in sales. Early days in sales. So they say motivation is temporary, inspiration is permanent. So I was a little motivated, and I'll tell you why. So I dated a girl in college who, a couple months into this opportunity in sales, she said some things to me that wasn't very nice, about my career choice, about what I was doing. And I don't know if you ever had a relationship where you kind of, you talk every day, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, then you talk like once a day, and then you talk like once every 2 days, and then you talk like once every 5 days. And then it's like once a week and once every two. Okay, so I didn't get the message, right? I didn't get the memo. And by the way, we were still dating, but we weren't dating, if you know what I mean. And so we never had the talk that we decided to go separate ways. And so I had heard, and I won't get in all the details of who, how, when, because this is going online, but I'd heard she started dating someone else that was a really successful artist, singer in particular. And through my college roommate who dated her friend or whatever, and I remember going back to Penn State one weekend and calling, and she didn't answer, etc. And we hung out all weekend with Michael, obviously one of my, the guy who hired me back in the day. And I realized that it was over, and she broke my heart, ripped it apart, stepped on it, threw it out, whatever. And so what I did was, when I got back to New Jersey, where I was learning sales, I took her picture and I put it in the door of my car, like in the little cubby on the side. And I would go out to the field, and before I got out of my car, I'm 22 years old, I pick up her picture and I'd say, "Fuck you, bitch." And I would get to work. I literally would get motivated, go in the field and sell a lot, and every day. And when I tell you every day, this was like an everyday routine. It was and then I would get out of my car. They say the hardest door to open is your car door. To get out of your car and to start working. And so I'll tell you, listen, 22 years old, take it for what it's worth. I was motivated by spite. I was motivated by, hey, proving people that, hey, she made a mistake. Hey, that I had a lot to do, and that she would come back. Now, I won't get in all the details, but I will tell you, less than 10 years later, I did speak to her. Through her, a friend's little sister interviewed one of our offices, and then figured out, like in Chicago, and said, "Oh, Ken does this and whatever." And then I got a phone call from her randomly, and it was 818 number, and I'm like, "Hello." And she's like, "Hi, this is so and so." Because again, I don't know. And I'm like, "Who? Who? I don't what?" And then, long story, "Oh, what's this business you run? I hear you have all these offices and blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, and you actually helped me." And so again, this was years later. I was more mature at this point, and we kind of laughed about it at that point in my life, and she laughed about it too. But I'll tell you, early days in sales, that was a big motivator for me. So there's 2 or 3 things I used to say to myself back then that have kind of come to fruition to an extent. The first thing I used to say to myself, because when people want to accomplish big things, there's normally challenges. The bigger the goal, the bigger the challenge, in my opinion. And one of the things I used to say to myself, and I still say it a lot, is there's only so much beachfront property. There's only so much beachfront property. And my wife and I, we've been, looking and doing some things behind the scenes about beachfront property, which is pretty cool. But my point is early days, I talked about it. Early days, I dreamed about it. Early days, I got motivated to work hard. The other thing I used to say, and I still say it, is not everyone can be millionaires. And so in my eyes, it's all about supply and demand. I wanted to be in an industry, I wanted to be in an opportunity where not many people had the, I don't know, the skill set, the mentality, the strength to accomplish what millionaires accomplish. Because when thinking of income, I grew up in a household that, we were okay, but we didn't have all of the nice, we didn't have all the opportunity. We never went on a vacation. Like we went on one vacation besides soccer tournaments. Like I didn't want to live that way. And in the last 3 months, I've been to more places than I did my entire childhood when it comes to travel. Now I'm going to Qatar in 2 months for the World Cup with 6 people and one person who's on this call, Joe Giordano, which is freaking, I can't wait. And so again, there's certain things that come with freedom, and you got to have the right mindset. And then the last thing is, when people, don't keep up, and listen, I'm pretty intense. I just had a kind of an intense conversation with some of our core leadership group, and I got, really real with them. And listen, some people can appreciate that. Some people can appreciate my passion for driving to goals and accomplishing things. And then some people, it kind of freaks them out a little bit, and they can't keep up, and it's unfortunate. But what I used to say back in the field, when other people in the office would make excuses or wouldn't put in the work or wouldn't go, the extra mile, I used to say in my heart and my mind, and not trying to be rude, I used to say, thank you for your city. Appreciate it. And I would just keep working. So what motivates you, what drives you could be different for everybody. Could be very different for everybody. But you got to be motivated, you got to be inspired. So that's the early days of sales. I'll tell you guys, my first year as an entrepreneur. So 23 years old, I started this business. 23 years old, the ripe age, when I didn't really know much. But I had a year of training with the guy who hired me. And I told this story, I won't tell it too long again, but I remember the first team night we had at my house. Well, it was actually a townhouse. I had 6 roommates. I lived with 6 different people. And I did that because as a young entrepreneur, I knew financial strength and keeping my money and saving my money was vital in the first 5 years of business. They say there's an old saying that you live 5 years like a pauper, then you can live the rest of your life the way you want to. And so I lived way below my means because I was saving capital in the company. I was saving everything because I didn't want to be a statistic. They say that majority of businesses go out of business their first year. Majority of ones that make it beyond a year go out of business in their first 3 years. And I just didn't want to be a statistic as I got my company started. And so the first team night we had at our house, we had a group of, I don't know, 5 or 6 of us. We just hired a new staff member. It was like the big win. We hired somebody. We were starting to grow. We were working with AT&T back in Columbus, Ohio. And they come over to my house, and I got spaghetti, and I got, some sauce. I got some, some lettuce, and did some salads. And I didn't realize that it probably was a bad idea also doing a team night at my house. Also a good idea, I guess. I don't know. But I brought people over. I didn't have furniture quite yet because we literally had just moved in and moved to Columbus to get the business started. I had 2 lawn chairs in my living room as our furniture. I had my college armoire thing that had my TV on it. That unfortunately there was a candle burnt into the middle of the TV because of a fun night of drinking and other things in college, and it was just a piece of junk. And I remember the next day we were so excited to talk about the new person and how we're going to help them. and I got a phone call that they quit. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? We just hired you. And they call and they tell me, they said, you know what, if you're the owner of the company and you don't have any furniture at your house, I don't know if I want to do this. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess, I mean, they have some, there's something there. I probably should get a couch. But I remember thinking to myself, man, people don't understand the early days of entrepreneurship. They say the founder of Facebook, stayed in an apartment for years, well beyond the years of being a millionaire, instead of buying all the homes and cars and the stuff that people need. And again, it's not the popular route to be an entrepreneur. It's not the popular route to save your money. Most people in the world would rather buy something and put it on their Instagram page and act like they're rich, as opposed to actually being really rich in their bank account. So, but I also remember if you guys in Columbus, Ohio, Tuttle Creek Mall. Do you guys know where that is? Tuttle Creek Mall. It's on the northwest side in Dublin area. I don't even know if it's even there anymore. It's 20 years later. But I remember waking up at 5:15 in the morning every day, getting my day started, doing my little exercise that I would do in the morning, and get into the office at 6:45 in the morning. My staff wouldn't get there until about 8. And I was, really kind of getting things rocking. I see, Joe, you're coming close. Do you know Dublin area and Tuttle Creek Mall?
The boys say it's called Tuttle Crossing now or something, right?
Oh, it is? Okay.
Tuttle Crossing.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's on the northwest side of Columbus, near Dublin area. And I just remember, waking up before sunrise. And I remember driving to the office, and there's this BMW dealership that's over there in Dublin. And I would drive by the BMW dealership on a daily basis in my little 2-door Honda Accord EX that I had gotten. And that was that first car I ever bought by doing the sales of our business. And I remember dreaming of the day that when I saved my first 100 grand, because that day when I saved my first 100 grand, I was actually going to get a car that I could rely on. And I actually went back to that same BMW dealership about 6-7 months later and bought my first BMW. It was a 330i M3 package, black on black, titanium interior, 22-inch rims. I was told a long time ago to set really aggressive financial goals, but along the way, reward yourself a little bit. Now, I'll tell you, over the years, I also set goals in negative. I knew business changes sometimes. And I knew if business changed financially and got below a certain amount of financial strength, then I was going to give back all the luxuries, because I was smart to maintain my head and my attitude about financials, and the business created the future. And I'll tell you, I also remember in the early days of people sitting down with me and saying things like, "Man, you work really hard. You're putting in 15-hour days. Man, I don't know if I can do what you do." And I remember thinking to myself, I own the company. Would you rather me sit on my ass and do nothing? And I started realizing that, hey, the right people are going to be motivated by seeing me work hard. They're going to respect the work ethic. And they're also going to, over time, going to do the same thing that I did to build their opportunities and build their situation. And I'll tell you, in my eyes, again, it has to do with like being a specialist. And the way I looked at it, because I had buddies of mine that were in college and that were still in medical school when I was starting the business. And a lot of them took another 8 years before they graduated from their different residencies and their medical schools and whatever. And then they got a chance with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in debt. They got a chance to work in a practice. And then 2 or 3 years later of working in a practice, then they started their own business. And I remember talking to them along the way, and some of them now, like we've had these conversations where it's like, man, why did you do all that school? Why didn't you just do something a little different and start your business this way, as opposed to spending the 10 years and all the money, and now you're like starting behind the 8 ball. You got all this debt you got to pay off. And that's unfortunate, but everyone makes their own choices, right? But I'll tell you, the key, if you want to be successful and you want to be an entrepreneur someday, in my eyes, it's all about learning what the unpopular route is. The unpopular route is the route of putting in a lot of time at work in your early career. So people say, they want balance. Oh, I want a balance. Okay, cool. If you want a job, you probably have balance, right? I said this yesterday. If you want a regular job, no problem. We provide jobs for sure. People do it in our company. They definitely have a job, and they put in a 40-hour work week. And I call that part-time in today's world of success. But if you put in a 40-hour work week, your balance will be like this. And then you'll probably have jobs for the next 40 or 50 years, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think some people, that's a perfect fit for their life and their lifestyle. What I wanted, again, I looked at the world a little bit differently. What I wanted was an imbalance. I wanted my life to be like this in my 20s and early 30s, so my life could be like this in my 30s and 40s. And so I would have, I put in a ton of time at work, a ton in my career, a ton of work. And then as business grew and business changed, I'd have freedom to make choices. I'd have freedom to accomplish certain things. And I'll tell you again, in my eyes, there's no price on freedom. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself what kind of goals you have, what kind of things you want to accomplish, what is going to be your greatness, what is going to be your thing. And listen, it could be, getting into, there's people that work in our organization that want to get into properties. I literally got an email this morning about an investment that some people want me to get involved with. And because of the relationships and peers and the business and everything else, I'm in these groups of people that are capturing all this real estate as the economy is going to die and dip. Unfortunately, there's people that are now emailing me because my eyes is hold on tight to all the finances for the next 6 to 12 months and start scooping up real estate that's going to be super cheap, and then I'll expand my portfolio, right? But then again, like that's I'm getting these emails literally. Like I said this morning, I got an email about some properties from a friend of mine in Ken also. But it's funny because I have a teammate of my son. One of the parents says to me as I talk through my October as at a soccer game recently, he says, "Man, I want your life," because he works for Ford. And I'm like, he's literally working all night because his factories are over in Japan. He works overnight. He works, comes to the games in the morning. I'm like, when do you sleep, man? Like, when do you sleep? He's like, a couple hours a night right now. He's like, how do I get your life? And I remember thinking after a conversation in the last 2 weeks, I'm like, I wonder if he wanted my life 20 years ago when I was putting in the 16-hour days. And when I was like, stressed out because I was, a young entrepreneur, and I was frustrated with our growth. And I was like, nobody wants that life. But they want it now that it looks good. They want it now that the business is booming. They want it now that we're in one of the biggest retailers in the world, and Target. We're now with Costco. We're now with Sam's. Like of course they want it now, but they didn't want it back then. So so I share that with you guys because, again, nothing great is going to come without a big challenge. The bigger your goals are, the bigger things you want to accomplish, the more you're going to have a challenge of getting through it. And so along the way, I wish back then, instead of being stressed out, instead of like doubting myself, I wish I would have just appreciated it and appreciated the challenge of it, because knowing that challenge is what creates the strength to do more. I said this yesterday, somebody who has a lot of time in their life, someone who's just kind of hanging out a lot, that person isn't very motivating to me. The person that has a lot to do and is very involved in their family, very involved in their alma mater, they're very involved with, different organizations, whatever. That person is the person I think is super motivating because they're already doing things. They're always busy. I love that guy. I love that gal. I want to work with them because I can help them, hone their skills, and I can hone their abilities. I can help them with their time management. They're probably the ones that, get super frustrated super fast because they want to be farther ahead. They want to do more. They want to accomplish things like yesterday kind of thing. Like that person is the person that I get super motivated about, not the one that's like, yeah, I'll be good, it's kind of hanging out. So anyways, the last thing I want to share with you guys is a perceived big hurdle and leaning into it. So when things are a challenge and things are hurdles, I'll tell you, my first office, my first location in Ohio, I was actually in a partnership with another small sales company, and we used to share office space. We should kind of work together. We do similar things nowadays in some offices. And I remember as I was getting in there and working, and I was putting in the time, and I was going to the field and doing my stuff and working with my team. That office wasn't growing very much. That office wasn't accomplishing very much, and unfortunately, it was the old saying is that the fish stinks from the head down, and that goes for any team, any organization. If you want a great team, you want to have a great people around you, then you got to be somebody worth following, in my opinion. And so I remember our team started to exponentially grow. And I'll tell you, I'm just being humble with you guys. I remember having a little piss and vinegar in my heart, and again, being a young little, I gained some confidence. I got a little cocky, and listen, there's an assistant manager on the other side of things, and we would go out and have drinks every so often. And the kid on their side of the office, that team, that company, got a little lippy about why we were doing so well and saying things about my team and whatever. And if you can imagine this, we're at a bar. I literally threw him into a table because I was so upset with the things he was saying about my people, as opposed to being calm, cool, and collected like I'm now. I remember like throwing him. He like bounced up things, drinks went everywhere, and then people was got into a big fight over it and whatever. And I remember thinking to myself after that how ashamed I was that I responded in that way. And then a few days later, I also remember that because of that happened, of course, he told his manager, and like, there's some people that had issues with me, and they probably should have. I also remember a few days later, I walked out to my car, my new BMW at that point that I had gotten, and they poured a pile of manure on my car, and it actually went down the back of the car. It seeped into my trunk. It was awful. That was the day that I walked in there and I politely said, "Hey, I appreciate letting me share the office space with you. I'm going to move out and get my own office space. I'm giving you my 30-day notice." I ended up moving to another space in a place called Muirfield Village. I don't know if you guys know Muirfield Village. It's kind of, there's a golf course there, and there's some tournament that goes through there in the PGA nowadays. And I remember thinking to myself that I'm just going to take the high road, and I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to clean my car. To be honest, I kind of deserve that. And I remember also thinking to myself that life has a very interesting way of working itself out. I saw some things he did, some choices he made. I wasn't, a fan of some of them, the choices he made. So it's just a good thing that I moved. And within 3 months, his company closed because unfortunately, the team that was there that worked for him didn't believe in their future because of his leadership or lack thereof. And I remember there was 2 or 3 people that when that company closed down that came and worked for me. And in the early days of the organization of growing, they actually became managers and key components to growing our offices. And my buddy, a guy named Kirk, and what an incredible guy that came out of that situation. And I remember just again thinking that although I was ashamed with what I did, by pushing the kid and everything else, I decided at that point forward to always take the high road, to never let other people get to me, and never let other people, own my emotions, because that doesn't always work out in a positive way. And I'll tell you what translated a couple months later in this new spot and my new situation. We grew our office to over 50 reps. We became the #1 office in the AT&T small business sector, and AT&T then started giving us opportunities to expand all over the Southeast. And I also remember my parents coming. I just turned, I think 23, 24 at that time. And my mom and dad came and visited the office for the very first time. And, my parents kind of knew I was running my own company. They kind of didn't know, they didn't really understand the whole system, the whole advancement opportunity in our model. And it was interesting because there's only a few times in my life that I remember my parents telling me they were proud of me. One time is when I got a scholarship to play soccer in college because it helped financially so much with the family at home. Another time is when I scored the winning goal in the state finals for my high school team, which was a huge moment, for our high school. And the third time was when I ran my own business and my mom saw me employ people. And that day, people came up to my mom and dad and said things like, thank you so much. Because of this job, I'm able to take care of my family. Because of this opportunity, I've been able to grow professionally. Your son spends a lot of time, learning about things and repaying it to us. And I remember driving to the airport after that meeting, and my mom had tears in her eyes. She was so proud of me. And I'll tell you, I think at the end of the day, no matter who you are, where you come from, there's someone in your life that you want to make decisions that someday they tell you that they're proud of you too. But it's all about learning. It's all about growing. And my goal today is just to share with you guys some stories of the early days. I'll tell you, I'm not perfect. I never try to be. If you're perfect, good for you. That's not me. But I hope you guys, through some of these stories, learn that, listen, if you got to have some motivations in your day to be great at any career, in learning and going through things, it's how you learn more about yourself, and ultimately, some big hurdles and how you respond to people, how your emotions are contained, and how they help you make decisions can really help you in your life. So happy Friday. Thanks for jumping on today. If you haven't joined the Clear channel, please jump on YouTube and join Clear channel. Really appreciate it. But we'll see you guys next Friday, same time, same place. Thanks again. See ya.